So we're here today. I'm joined by Caroline Field, our resilience expert, and Kimberley Johnston, our decarbonisation of cities expert. I'm Jonquil Hackenberg, Global Head of Sustainability and Climate Response at PA. We're really looking at one of the topics that is on the agenda at Davos today, which is biodiversity and nature-based solutions. Why does that even need to be on a leadership agenda in the business context? If you look at the risk of supply that is being predicated by everything that's happening in the Ukraine right now, but also the pandemic over the last couple of years, the risk to supply because of climate disasters that are increasing in number, and of course the risk to supply by transient populations. All of these things mean that we need to look at supply chains in a slightly different way. Competition today is defined by end consumer and customer, and the perspective that we have is really how that competition is going to be redefined by resource scarcity. So Caroline, with all of that in mind, why do you feel that nature-based solutions and biodiversity needs to be on the agenda for resilience?
Yeah, thanks, Jonquil. Well, absolutely, you were right in terms of the disruption we've seen over the last 3 years. We're going to have more of the same and actually be, it's going to be a lot worse with climate change and the effects of that. And so, just thinking about our sort of food supply chain, the disruption we've seen during Ukraine, we're going to see that tenfold with climate change in terms of the change in kind of temperatures and the water resources around the world. We're going to see potential, wars over resource scarcity, and then we're going to see climate migration as well in terms of the people moving. And so we apparently want to be the most resilient nation here in the UK. And so in order to do that, I believe we need to really take a leadership around biodiversity, climate resilience. And so it should be at the top of everyone's agenda because we can't avoid that disruption and we need to prepare for it.
That's brilliant. So you're seeing this public-private sector nexus around resilience is going to be
Absolutely.
key.
I mean, resilience is about systems of systems, and so you can't have national resilience without organisational resilience, city resilience and community resilience.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Kimberley, what's your perspective from a city's angle?
Absolutely. From a city's angle, and this is urban, and we have most of our populations are in dense cities that are faced with extreme climate threats each day. Our planet is burning, and the temperatures are rising, and according to the last IPCC report, we have 8 years. And which is fast approaching, and we really need to start thinking of catalyst change to not only protect our biodiversity systems, which are really our natural-based ecosystems, the oceans, the rainforests, the coral reefs. Without them, there is no humanity. And at the same time, we have to look at the decarbonization of industrial areas where predominantly are these urban, dense populations with sea oceans rising, polar vortexes. I didn't even know what a polar vortex was until a year ago. And we just saw one hit the US again. So that's like third in less than a year. And so wildfires, tornadoes. I feel that at one point in our lifetime, we probably will cease flying. I mean, that's how threatening this is to our planet and the life we know today. So it's critical. It's on everybody's agenda.
I think you're right, and when you mentioned the 8 years that we have from the IPCC report, there's another thing about 8 years, which is, of course, that from the UN reports that's talking about we've got 8 years before 40% of our existing water solutions are going to be depleted. So that nexus of water and decarbonisation and how these complex ecosystems come together just lends itself to a need for, I think, these public-private sector partnerships.
Absolutely. Well, as we mentioned, it's all about sort of systems thinking, about the systems of systems and how they interconnect. And I think, for so long we've worked in these silos, and you can't be resilient or sustainable in a silo. And so we need to be working across sectors, collaborating. You can't decarbonise in one sector. And this is why it's so hard, because we have to talk to each other. We have to talk vertically and horizontally. And so, I think that's something that, we're really focused on in terms of just trying to bring together the right stakeholders and parties to make that difference. I mean, you can't be the most resilient nation or the most resilient city by just one part of that being resilient. It just doesn't work.
That's very true. Have you seen any good examples of some of these partnerships that are starting to emerge, Kimberley?
Absolutely. I mean, the public and private sector need to collaborate with urgency, and I absolutely agree. It's pervasive across sectors. So we've certainly seen with Breakthrough Energy, where they launched their anchor partnership, where they were soliciting global Fortune CEOs to represent every sector and raising $100 million to be an anchor partner, and that was matched with European stimulus, UK, as well as US, and to really start to invest and into decarbonization solutions at scale, because what we saw with wind and solar, the cost parity to be very commercial viable was a long tailwind to compete against natural gas. Well, so that stimulus is very important to ramp up and drive acceleration to cost parity and commercialization. So that's a great example of a public-private partnership. Another one is with Global Resilient Cities Network. And we're starting to see at the city level where governments and the private sector are coming together, because at the local level you can really catalyze change, although you need it at the national level to get government stimulus, the incentives, but then it's usually allocated to those jurisdictions, provinces or states or other regions, and then it trickles down to the local level. But I think really starting at the local level is very key, and I see Resilient Global Cities Network being very impactful. They're backed by Rockefeller Foundation as well as C40 by Bloomberg.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's good.
And we have a major play to play because that's our specialty, public-private sector.
Absolutely.
Innovation and transformation.
And those ecosystems of technologies that we can then scale up and help design with that. We're already seeing that with, for example, some of the clients we're working with is how do you scale up those green technologies and play into a theme around a city that then becomes all pervasive, that funds can contribute to and therefore have much more impact.
Yeah. Well, it's quite interesting. So obviously with the Ukraine conflict at the moment, obviously that's really highlighted global energy supplies, and certainly here in the UK we've been talking about energy independence, which is obviously more resilient, and then actually if you can actually really catalyse the kind of green tech industry in terms of the productivity, that's the sweet spot where we're solving resilience, sustainability and productivity. And I do believe there is a space there that we can really kind of push forward and really achieve. But it's not easy, but I think that's kind of the road we're on, isn't it?
So Kimberley, just looking at the conversations that we had yesterday in Davos with the public and private sector conversations, what's your key takeaway around biodiversity and the nature-based solution agenda?
So my key takeaway is leading with purpose. I truly believe that across the public sector, private and public sector, lead with purpose and decarbonize our planet, as well as protect those natural-based solutions and scale them, and we'll get to where we need to be.
I think you're absolutely right. Caroline, what do you think?
Totally agree, and I think that sort of leads into the sort of systems thinking we touched on earlier. We need to be able to think in systems and not silos, and so that joined up kind of partnerships coming together. We cannot solve sustainability and resilience in isolation, so I really think systems thinking is crucial.
Yeah, and I just add to both of those things really, how you need to focus on what you do best and partner everywhere else so that we don't start to overlap but have an amplified effect. I think that's going to be pretty key.
Absolutely.
So thank you very much for joining us. Ladies, thank you very much for the enlightening conversation and we will see you soon.